Over the next few months, I look forward to working with Interim President Way on a transition. And I do want to make the point, I will try to make it here a few times. If you see me here in May, I'm a student. I'm not the president. He is your president. I need to learn. And that's one of my key goals. I have three things I'd like to get done in the first few months, because you're probably saying to yourself, what's this guy going to do when he gets here? There are three. And the first one actually goes back to one of my mother's rules. And I'm sure many of you, when you got in the car to go visit a relative or a friend, or even go to the store or museum, you got a speech, something along the lines of be polite, respect your elders. Well, my mama was turned around. We had a black Buick LeSabre, and she turned around and she said, okay, don't break anything. And so the first few months is, okay, don't break anything. And I will try really hard. You guys are doing just a fantastic job here. So I won't break anything. And then I need to learn. And I need the help of this whole community. As I'm walking on a pathway, as I'm sitting at lunch, answer one simple question for me. From your perspective, where you work, what does it take for me to be an effective president? And it has to be unvarnished. I'm really thick-skinned. The truth matters. Just what does it mean to be an effective president? Because there's going to be so much that goes on. And the third thing I'm going to do is work on operationalizing what's going to be at least my guiding principle to begin with, and that is how do you help to perpetuate and where possible improve the incredible work this university does to help the students work for the common good of our Commonwealth and our communities. And I don't know what that means. It's very grandiose. It has to be operationalized. And part of that learning is how do you operationalize that locally? And that's what I hope to do. And I want to keep this brief, so I want to share one pearl of wisdom, if you will. You can learn things from a variety of places. And those of you who were in the auditorium when I was doing my talk, so one of the students had said something about needing to own more green. And so when I got the job, I started looking for green ties. And it's really hard to find green ties that aren't ugly. I need to share that with you. So my lovely wife found on the internet a tie place, creatively called ties.com. And so this is one of the first purchases on ties.com. So I'm putting it on this morning for the first time, and I take the tag off of it. And the tag says, work hard and be excellent to each other. And you can learn stuff everywhere. So I happen to think that that's a great theme for the first year of a presidency. Work hard and be excellent to each other. So I hope that together we can work hard and be excellent to each other. Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you? My name is Danny DeFabio. I'm the news editor for our on-campus newspaper, The Rocket. And my first question, I attended your open campus forum, and one thing you brought up that kind of stuck with me was how you weren't the kind of candidate who just sent your application to every university, like, if you saw an opening, you kind of narrowed it down and you picked a few universities. And that really rang true, especially as we saw other candidates who came that week and now they're accepted at other universities, so you can see that they applied elsewhere. So I was wondering what really attracted you to Slippery Rock University and made you narrow it down to one of your few that you did apply to?
I was targeting places that if they didn't exist, there was a significant chance that some of the students, or a chunk of the students who went there, wouldn't have a place to go. And if you look at Slippery Rock, it's about 30% of the students who go here receive federal Pell Grants, which means that they have high need and may or may not have gotten the best support in their secondary education. And so, as I looked at institutions, there are basically two types of institutions that really cater well to those populations, in my opinion. And they tend to be institutions that where you get to know people's names. And so they tend to be the smaller publics and some of the smaller privates. Those are the two categories. And that's where I was limiting myself. And then it really became, what made Slippery Rock stand out to me is it's a really challenging higher education landscape right now. And what's really fantastic about this place is the struggle that you have is how do you thrive? It's not how do you survive. You're not worrying about can you turn the lights on next week. And there are plenty of institutions in this country that are worrying about can you turn the lights on next week. You're you're worrying about what is really the juiciest problem and the greatest problem is how do you take a great institution and help it to thrive even greater. And I'm excited about that possibility.
Thank you.
Just go away. What's your #1 goal as president?
Well, can I go with not break anything? The #1 goal is going to evolve. It has to evolve. Early on, and all joking aside, early on it is not to come in and put my will upon a great institution. It's to come in, learn about the great institution, figure out where its tension points are, because every place has tension points, and then work with the community and work with the folks who have long-term knowledge to build solutions to that. So that's the first phase goal. Ask me in 6 or 8 months what the next phase goal is, because then I'll know and I'll be able to answer that honestly.
Nathan Bodiger about the Regal. How familiar are you with the area? Is this, a new experience for you?
Western Pennsylvania is new, but I spent 16 years of my life in a small town in eastern Pennsylvania. I lived in Bucks County for a long time. And so the Apache system is very familiar to me. My kids went to high school through the Pennsylvania public schools. And so I'm very, very knowledgeable as a parent and a consumer as well about the system and the structures. In terms of local knowledge, I'm still learning the roads. I'm still figuring that part out.
And what does good leadership mean to you, and how do you hope to achieve that goal?
The cliche of good leadership is the notion of servant leadership. The problem with the phrase servant leadership is each person has their own definition of what it is, and so it's almost a meaningless phrase. But it is servant leadership for me, and now I'll try to define it a little bit for you. It's sort of what I just said a second ago. I've been in higher ed for 20 some odd years. I have a lot of opinions on how, my wife just chuckled. I have a lot of opinions. But being a good leader, especially in a transitional period, is not about what my opinions are. It's about marshaling the skills and strengths of the whole community towards the problems that are defined by the whole community. Now, I'm going to be a critical friend to those problems. I'm not going to sit back if I see a challenge and the whole community is ignoring it. I'm not going to ignore that and not point it out. But it really is marshaling the resources of the community towards a shared goal. And that's the only way you can lead in higher ed. I had a mentor, a guy named Steve Briggs, who's the president down at Behre College. And one of he gave me 2 great pieces of advice as a leader. One is you have to be aware of the tyranny of the urgent, and you have to think long term, even when you have these urgent problems in front of you. And that's really, really important. The other one he said was the only way you make meaningful change in higher education is relentless pressure gently applied. And actually, I said it backwards. Gentle pressure, relentlessly applied. Gentle pressure, relentlessly applied. And I think that's true. It's to work with a system, ask those tough questions. In many ways, a good leader in a university is asking the community the tough questions, the questions the community has to face. He or she is not fixing it. He or she's asking the questions and marshaling the resources. And you do that through that gentle pressure over time. Yes?
Hi, I'm Kayla with Butler Radio. This was a really long search process, and I know a lot of other state schools are going through turnover of their presidents. Do you hope to be here long? What's your expectation?
Nah, it's about a week and a half.
Forever.
I'm 52 years old. And one of my other mentors, Bobby Gidenstein, was the president at the College of New Jersey, retired this year after 17 years. That was an amazing run. It would be a whole lot of hubris to say I'm standing here 17 years from now. But I don't view it as a short-term gig. Yes?
What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge going from the position of Chief Academic Officer to University President?
I think the biggest challenge is to remember that I'm not Chief Academic Officer, I'm the University President. And I'm serious about that. I'm being flip, but it's also true. I have a different job, or I will have a different job when I come here. And you have very good people in those academic positions. And I've had the benefit, my current president, came from a provost position, and he's modeled very well for me. In fact, we've talked a lot about where his role ends and mine begins. And it's not that I don't go and seek advice from him occasionally, and I would clearly give advice to anyone who asks me, but he knows he does very well drawing the line. And I would try to take that model and bring it here.
Morgan Koziar with WSRU-TV News. How do you plan on working with students, administration, faculty, and even PASHE?
I think being present with a capital P, it's not just showing up at events. It's sitting down, it's listening, it's understanding, like working with a system. You have to realize that in the state system, we're one of the strongest, healthiest institutions in the state system. If we're going to remain healthy, if this arm remains healthy, the heart has to be healthy as well. And so we have to work with the system in order to keep the whole system healthy. So it's a matter of speaking to the chancellor and listening to the very real concerns systemically. It's sitting with the students and listening to the very real concerns that they have. And then again, it isn't then going back to my office, closing the door, pulling the shades down and coming up with my own solution. It's trying to figure out what are the resources we have here that we can marshal, and then when necessary, what are the resources I have to discuss centrally that we can marshal in order to solve whatever problems are here. So it's advocating in all directions, but more importantly, it's listening in all directions and really trying to triangulate and not just triangulate to find a solution, but triangulate to define the problem. Because if there's a struggle here, and you ask a student constituency, you ask a faculty constituency, you ask an administrative constituency, they're going to have a different take on what that struggle is and what the underlying cause is. So a lot of it is defining those assumptions up front. What is the problem? What are we trying to solve? Then it's figuring out what are our local resources, what can we do, and then what do we need that's beyond here.
Actually, I had a question for Trustee Smith. So just,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
all right. So obviously, as the search committee chair, you were kind of out in front of the whole process, which was obviously longer than most of us would have liked. But through everything that happened, do you think at the end of the day, now we have a president here, do you think it was all worth it?
Well, please say yes.
I was hoping I wasn't going to get asked that question. No, it has been. It was a lot of work, and I can't tell you how hard the search committee, and there's a number of them here today, worked on this. I was the face of it, but they're the ones who did the work, and they're the ones that deserve all the credit for the eventual outcome of this search. And yeah, it was definitely worth it. I mean, I think President-elect Behre doesn't want to say he'll be here for 17 years. I'll tell you what, 17 years, maybe he'll be a little old by then, but at least I see him 15 years. So it was definitely worthwhile, and things ended up, I don't know, we could have asked for a better outcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. As we said, the reception is going to be held in the adjacent room, so if everybody wants to head over there, media members, if you want to hang back for a couple minutes, the President-elect is going to be available for some one-on-one questions and follow-ups. So that brings us to a conclusion. Thank you, everybody.